Hi. So this week we looked through the JSTOR database and I started my search using the search term socialism in America. And I wanted to see what would come up, and most of what I found covered the early part of the 1900s. That's the time period I wanted to look into further, and so I opened three of the articles. The first article was Christianity and Socialism in America, 1900 to 1920, by Robert Handy. And he outlined the progression of the infiltration of socialist thought into religious denominations during that time. Handy tells of his reasons for why the movement gained support and its decline during the First World War. He referenced 60 sources that included books and articles favoring socialism and the social gospel, as well as those that were on the other side of the argument. So it was a very well balanced review. The article helped to define the difference between earlier Christian socialists, those who were committed to a socialist movement prior to 1890, and those who were pushing for a new form of socialism. So that meaning the older form was committed to Tolstoy, while the newer was committed to the teachings of Engel. In conclusion, the author talked about the effects of the movement and the Presbyterian and Church of Christ denominations as having lasting effects, even though the effects were not sweeping. However, there was enough of an emphasis on the social gospel that it continued to influence those denominations. So the second article I reviewed is called Socialism in America, and that was by Richard Ely. He began with the aims of socialism, seeking to support the claim. Ely explained that socialism, at least in America, was about doing away with the capitalists. Ely began with a comparison of earlier forms of socialism by actually pointing to slavery as one of the means in history that socialism reared its head. And those days, he claims that slavery was a way of making a peaceful society by putting capital and labor in the hands of the master, but that has since changed by moving it to the working class. He went on to talk about in his article other times in American history where socialism, even softer forms, were being played out. He cites the establishment of Jamestown, the movement of the Shakers, and then ends up talking about the anarchist movement, and then finally concluded the article with some of his thoughts. Ely wrote an opinion article, I would call it, and cites no sources in his article. In conclusion, he did not believe, as long as the socialists stuck with a peaceful nature, that the socialist movements should be suppressed in any way, believing that righteousness is the only way to save America from socialist ills. Then the last article I reviewed was Christian Socialism in America by John Spargo. This article first appeared in the journal American Journal of Sociology in an issue from 1909. While it does not offer any cited sources of information, since it was written in the early 1900s, it was an article well worth the review. The Christian Socialist Fellowship was reviewed in this article, big group that appeared during that time. He referenced several, and it was referenced several times in the first article I outlined by Handy. So it was not the first time to come up in one of these articles. This article was similar to Handy's article in that it dealt with the history of socialism in the church. It is much shorter than Handy's article. It's an overview that talks a little of the Germanic roots of America's socialism and its spread through Christian circles. The purpose of the article is found in the conclusion, and that is the spread of socialism throughout the religious community was a spread that not even Marx could have expected. All three of these articles do provide context around the spread of socialism in Christian groups in the United States in the early 1900s. While they don't take an exhaustive look, the names tend to be the same ones in each article that are worth noting and doing more research on later to discover more on the subject. My conclusion is that socialism's main spread in the United States was finally being noticed in the early 1900s, and influential leaders, those like Walter Rauschenbusch, which is another name that came up quite a few times, they were ones who perpetuated a social gospel. Thank you.